racism, or cancel culture? The choice is yours. The Wilkow majority.
So Jennifer Say, who was unceremoniously blown out as the brand manager of Levi's for daring to question school COVID lockdown policies, wrote the book, Levi's Unbuttoned, The Woke Mob Took My Job, but gave me my voice, and now she has a page on Substack, and she joins us now. How you doing?
I'm good.
I didn't know how political. I mean, I don't understand why you would be blown out for just questioning school lockdowns. Lots of people did. Some of them did lose their jobs. But how political is the Levi Strauss company?
Well, they would say they're apolitical, but they are, in fact, very political. And unfortunately, school closures and lockdowns and all of the COVID restrictions became very politicized. It shouldn't have been, but it was. And while lots of people may have said it, they didn't say it in San Francisco. So I think the bluer a state and city was, the more fervent the support for these public health edicts was. And, I was very outspoken from the very beginning. I have 4 children, all in public schools, not private. And it was considered unacceptable. I deviated from the narrative of the Democratic Party, which is everyone needs to stay locked down until there's no more COVID, essentially. It went on for 2 years. I was encouraged, urged, told I needed to stop, and I didn't. And eventually I was told there wasn't a place for me anymore. I should mention, though, that many of the executives urging me to stop were sending their children to in-person private school. So the hypocrisy was glaring.
Before we talk about the NDA and the money you were offered, which was substantial, which I admire the hell out of you for turning it down, where do they put most of their political days? This is kind of a rhetorical question. I think I know the answer. Where do they put most of their political money, or at least the executives?
Yeah, Levi's makes no political donations directly to candidates or PACs or anything, and they're clear about that. But in terms of the stances they take, the public stances they take, they're all endorsed by the Democratic Party. They're all sort of left-leaning, if not far-left stances. I don't have the data off the top of my head about what percentage of employees are registered Democrats and donating to Democratic candidates. But, I'm guessing in San Francisco in the corporate office, it's darn near close to 100%. But I don't have that information readily available. But I believe in San Francisco, well over 90% of people that live there are registered Democrats. So, the employee population would follow suit.
Well, you have Dan Goldman, who's one of the heirs to, I guess, a portion of the Levi Strauss fortune, ran as a Democrat here in New York's 10th congressional district.
That's right, and won, if I'm not mistaken, and outspent the other candidates in the primary. I think by all combined, he spent 4 times more than all of them, all in, using his personal wealth as a heir of Levi Strauss. Money he made from bolstering of the stock price through, in some instances laying off hundreds and hundreds of workers. Levi's laid off 15% of the workforce under the cover of COVID, while the CEO cashed out over $40 million in stock. This is how Goldman makes his money as well. There are other links to the Democratic Party. The director of protocol for Gavin Newsom, I'm not sure what that is. If you can tell me, I would love to know. She spent 13 years working at Levi's in corporate communication and is the daughter-in-law of the largest shareholder, Mimi Haas. So, the company, whether directed to or not, moves in lockstep with the Democratic Party. And I challenged the Democratic Party, so that was unacceptable.
Now, tell me, and I know the answer to this, what state and what union oversees American manufacturing of this iconic American brand?
Well, there's very little manufacturing.
I know. I knew that. That's
in the
see. This
United
is
States.
the problem. You have a company like Nike that was hit with questions about where they're producing their product, what they're paying their workers, what's the age of their workers, and then all of a sudden, Colin Kaepernick is a spokesperson, and we forget all about it. Right? That this is
That's
how
right.
how woke capitalism kind of works. That nobody's going to say, "Hey, Levi's, you're a heritage American company. You made your profits initially on working class people dungaree." For people we don't call them dungarees anymore. We call them jeans. Even though on that little piece of leather in the back it says dungarees. Dungarees are what you wore to do the crap work, right? Dungarees were originally considered low class clothing. It probably wasn't until the 40s and the 50s that it became part of American style, and now you could buy jeans that are upwards of $200-300 if they're designer. But it all started with this company, a company that places itself mostly on the left, doesn't even hire Americans to make their product anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think you described, what I write about in the book as woke capitalism really well. It's one giant virtue signal. It's an attempt to, capitalize off of Gen Z activism. Really, it is a pose. It's a marketing strategy to make money. People fall for it. I think the leaders themselves fall for it. And it's an attempt to, curry favor with younger consumers, to feel good about themselves, not as greedy capitalists, but as altruists. I have tons of examples in the book, but, another example outside of manufacturing is Nike, and across 2017 to 2019, all sorts of horrific treatment of female employees and female athletes was revealed, on the cover of the New York Times. Yet they run campaigns featuring Kaepernick and other, female athletes touting their women's empowerment. And at the same time, they're harassing women inside the company. They're not paying pregnant athletes. They're abusing runners in their training program. So it's all opposed, and yet somehow consumers don't seem to care. They accept the marketing, which is a lie.
Was there any voices when you were there that were saying, "Hey, we should maybe reopen some factories here or onshore production"? I know that was a big item for Donald Trump, was trying to encourage people. He was working with even Apple to get them. Was there anyone in the company, or was it? You're powerless. Just do your job and keep your mouth shut. And I'm not going to hold that over anyone's head. I mean, if you're the brand manager, your job is to do your job. I don't know whether or not your input would have mattered on that, but was there anyone in the company that was a voice for American manufacturing, or was it just the woke capitalism stuff?
Mostly the woke capitalism stuff. I mean, I was the brand president. I oversaw design of the product, marketing, store design, that kind of thing. I did not manage supply chain. It's not that I did, which is, who would decide where the products get made. And I will say, Levi's was one of the very last brands to offshore their production. Clearly, goods are made cheaper elsewhere, overseas. And as financial pressures became greater and greater, with places like Walmart selling, $11 jeans, it became difficult to compete. Nobody was pushing for it.
Where do they make most of their stuff?
They have a very diverse supply chain, which enables them to be quite agile. They make none in China, so that is one positive.
Okay. Well, I just, looking at this, and I'm reading your piece at Substack. I mean, the fact that their head of human resources would be needling you, and others would be needling you for simply, I don't even know why. Why would this? I don't understand how this would fall as a negative on Levi's. Like you said, a lot of these companies, I mean, it wasn't like someone was going to go, "Oh, well, I was going to buy a pair of 501s or whatever," but Jennifer Say is questioning, questioning the lockdowns in her kid's school. I'm going to go buy a pair of Wranglers now.
No, I know it's sort of crazy, but this woke mob takes over. Employees, a very small minority of very vocal, very punitive employees, were complaining. That made them uncomfortable. There was a pretty small, social media mob wanting to cancel me and asking for my job. And ultimately they bowed to that crowd, that very vocal minority, which is why it's so important for people to stand up and challenge. So many people thought school closures and lockdowns were wrong, but were too afraid to say anything. They were afraid of the names they'd be called, names I was called, things like racist, eugenicist, teacher, murderer. But you have to, because we're the majority. I really believe that. The people who look at the facts and read the data and have common sense. But some of us are kind of hung out to dry because others are too afraid to stand up and challenge. And that's what we really need everyone to do. And that's what the book is about. It's really asking people to screw up their courage a little bit and use their voices, because this very angry, punitive minority is canceling people who don't, no one deserves it, but is canceling anyone that dares challenge a narrative. And that's what it was. It was a narrative. Closed schools were never effective, they were never necessary, and they were always going to be harmful to a generation of children.
I will say this. You have great courage. You have obviously great principle, because most people looking at sign this NDA, take $1 million and just go away. I think most people would take the $1 million.
I think that's probably right, and it certainly would make my life a lot easier. But so much of what I was fighting against in the 2 years that I continued speaking out on this issue, because I cared about what was happening to children, low-income children in particular, I was also fighting back against this idea that I can't say a thing that's true because I have a job and I work in a company. So to accept the hush money and walk away would just have felt so hypocritical, and it would have gone against everything that I said I stood for and that I do stand for. So I just couldn't do it. I couldn't sign an NDA and take the hush money.
That's I know my saying that's commendable doesn't mean anything, right? I mean, so someone's looking at $1 million sitting on the table, me putting my arm around you going, you are a courageous person, right? It's like, get your arm off me. I get big, I get it. That's, you are a principled person, and there's absolutely no denying that. My top of the hour.
It does mean something. I thank you, and it means something when people read the book and they reach out to say thank you. It means a lot. It gets me through, I gotta say.
It's a lot. You're walking around like, it's $1 million we're talking about here. It's like if they were going to give you a couple $100 and a bus ticket. All right, Jennifer Say, it's my top of the hour music. Levi's Unbuttoned, the woke mob took my job but gave me a voice. That's the book. You should really read it. Sirius XM Patriot.